everybody,
and
welcome
back
back
to another glorious session. My name is Icarix, and the git right in front of me, but you can't see, is known as Kunagusis. Kunagusis, you little git, how are you doing today?
Welcome back to our Seleukidai DEI DEI Let's Play. Now, to preface this and say, as far as I'm aware, as far as Icarix has told me, there won't be any battle replays in this one. He decided it wasn't worth including, for all sorts of bollocks reasons, I'm sure. So it's just going to be the usual setup and hope that you find this entertaining enough. We do have an attack from some rebels on a settlement of ours, but I just decide that auto-resolving it is more than sufficient.
I see the battle is being led by Leonidas of all people.
Well, certainly not the Leonidas that everybody thinks of, because that man is long dead by this time period. By like
I couldn't help
over
but
a century.
this.
Like over a century at this point.
I know. I couldn't help but reference him though.
I know. Ah, yes, Leonidas.
The one,
People-
the only.
Well, the one people tend to only remember him because of that bloody thing, film 300. Which really is a weird depiction of things. I know it's a graphic novel by Frank Miller, but like, seriously? Some of it's just quite weird, and I think some do have some
Weird.
criticism.
It's Sparta. Come on, everything's weird in Sparta.
Except Sparta's overrated.
Overrated. This is Sparta. God damn it.
That's the whole point, though. That film plays into the whole exaggerated mythos of Sparta. Sparta wasn't that special. And they were not the big military hardened badasses. But they boasted, from my understanding, some reasonably solid heavy infantry, in part because they were one of the very few Greek states to have a full-time standing army. But that was where their whole system was kind of messed up, because Spartan did a really exclusive way of citizenship. Only Spartiates, I think, were citizens. Everybody else were, not. And they varied from being, I think, Perioikoi, which were kind of non-citizens, to the Helots, which were slaves. And I think it was those Helots that really ran their economy, because a Spartiate man was his only role was to be a soldier. That's my understanding. I'm sure they again had solid enough hoplites, but that's kind of the extent of it. And as I like to point out, the whole 300 thing, Thermopylae, it wasn't just 300 Spartans. Their phalanx was supported by several thousand Greeks from other states, most of whom went home before the final day. You know, I think 1,000 from some other cities I don't remember fought alongside the Spartans and died. But the rest kind of all went home before then.
I mean, you have to keep in mind though that the average moviegoer probably wouldn't have known about this information beforehand.
Well, obviously, and I get that, but the whole thing is that the film plays a lot into that overwanking. You know, it also is really weird in how these are probably going to be nitpicky, but even like they're depicted as bare-chested, you know, with cloaks and helmets that vaguely might look like Corinthian-style helmets, but not really. But it's like even just the bare-chested thing, like Jesus, not even a tunic. You know, that's just impractical.
I mean, if not bare-chested, then what would have? Like, I have no idea if this is based on historical fact or whatnot, but Would there have been like an alternative method of them like sort of like showing off their ruthfulness and fearfulness and stuff like that, or
Well, I'll
is
put it
that
as
just
an
something?
average Spartan hoplite, you might say. Or at least, typically they would have worn, well, some sort, they were a tunic, of course. They would have had some form of armour. Probably they leaned more towards the muscled cuirass. Bronze body armour shaped like muscled abs. And they would have probably had, I think they liked using Corinthian helmets.
Friends, the gift of God.
You know,
My people do not like
and
luxury, but money
that's
is
at least the
needed.
broad idea. I think most of their helmets are crested, with I think higher ranked officers, like Leonidas, had the crest going side to side. But you know, that's Broadway how it would work.
But this is just a speculation, is it?
Well, no, that's from what we understand of the facts. Like, at least what the evidence suggests. I don't think Greeks in general would have gone bare-chested fighting in a phalanx. That's just silly. If they needed some kind of body armor protection, but not the full metal cuirass, a linothorax would suffice.
I guess.
That's made of linen. Hardened linen, but still linen. Or they might have just simply worn a tunic and not needed armor. Certainly the likes of Ekdromoi would have probably not worn much body armor, since their job was to kind of run out, hence the name. Ekdromoi mean like runners out. They're made just to like chase down Peltasts and stuff, but that's like Peloponnesian War, which is after Thermopylae, because I'm pretty sure people who've at least played Assassin's Creed Odyssey can tell enough that Thermopylae, the Greco-Persian War, Thermopylae happens decades before the Peloponnesian War, since the game itself takes place in the Peloponnesian War. But
very ironic that an Assassin's Creed game happens to get some of these historical accuracies a little bit more correct than a graphic novel that has the Battle of Thermopylae as like its main focus. I do find that quite ironic.
Although
let's just
Assassin's
say.
Creed was still not very accurate in how it depicted things like Thermopylae.
I know, but they got certain things about
a big open
they got certain things about their
free-for-all.
fighting style and
Well,
general
the
attire a little bit more correct, I
the
suppose.
general equipment is probably not too bad. The general equipment overview is actually not too bad. Linothoraces, the muscle style cuirasses, you know, the Corinthian style helmets, you know, that's all pretty decent enough. Of course, depicting the battles as some big open field free-for-all is just ridiculous. You know, granted, I get that for like an RPG type game, actual hoplite phalanx style battles are probably not going to be seen as the most exciting thing. But like,
Would they really have been in like cramped fields or something?
I would say cramped fields. It's more that the whole point is that the Greeks fought in a formation called a phalanx. A hoplite style phalanx meaning their shields kind of locked in a sense. And it was in a sense, call it more, maybe not outright passive, but it's more like you're in a dense formation as you're kind of whittling each other down until the other side breaks. Maybe you've got some ranged troops to assist or cavalry to also assist, but Greeks didn't do a whole lot of cavalry. I think in part just the terrain didn't really suit itself very well to cavalry warfare, other than more northern regions where they had better cavalry, like Thessaly and I think Macedon. So cavalry wouldn't have been too prominent. Peltasts were a thing. These were skirmishers. Well, broadly they were skirmishers, you could say, but it wasn't I'd say, the exclusive function of a peltas. Peltas simply just meant one who bears a pelte, a kind of crescent-shaped shield made out of wood or wicker that was prominently used by the Thracians, which were kind of a northern neighbour of the Greeks. And in fact, eventually the so-called Thracian helmet, or Phrygian helmet, more so because it resembles what's called a Phrygian cap, would become quite popularly used by, I think, the Peloponnesian War. It would become more popular, I think, than the Corinthian helmet, because you could see and hear better. The Corinthian kind of, and we'll probably demonstrate pictures if I remember to send them to you, showcasing like a Phrygian, Thracian style helmet and Corinthian, but the basic idea, Corinthian is the iconic helmet most people think about when it comes to the Greeks. That's the very closed off helmet, you know. The helmet
The one that's kind of featured in Odyssey?
Yes. That is a Corinthian style helmet, more or less. So it protects a good bit of the face, but it obscures a lot of your vision, because you really only have just small eye holes. The Phrygian Thracian style helmet, well, it sort of varies a little bit, because in its most basic sense, it could just be a simple helmet on your head that has a bit of a loop, curvy bit, because like a Phrygian cap in style. But you could have these cheek plates on it, which is what you see, for example, in a lot of the depictions of phalangites, Macedonian style pikemen, or hoplites in this game. Here, we're seeing Ptolemaioi. See that particular helmet on the Ptolemaic figure?
Yeah.
That's a Phrygian or Thracian style helmet.
Okay.
And you see what looks like a beard on him? That's the cheek plates of the helmet. It's fashioned.
Oh, I thought that was just a face mask.
No, it's the helmet's cheek plates form like a beard. It's styled like a beard.
Oh. Impressive.
Yeah, so that was that amount. But as you could see, it's a bit more open face. You can see more.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think especially when dealing with peltas and stuff, it might have been more popular. Because peltas can be quite tricky to deal with, I believe, for the Greeks. Sure, even the battle of it was in not the Peloponnesian War so much. I think it was the Corinthian War after the Peloponnesian War. I don't remember exactly, but there was a battle called the Battle of Lycaeum between Athens, I believe, and Sparta. The Athenian force was led by a man called Iphicrates. Astute observers or people who've played DEI may know there's a unit called the Iphicratian Peltas. It's related to this, but basically Iphicrates had an army that consisted of just peltasts, and was up against a Spartan army, mainly hoplites with some cavalry. Now, it's been a while since I've read the account of said battles, so I'm going largely by memory here. But basically, the Spartans tried to deal with this peltast army, so they sent their ekdromoi, the runners, out. These were men of the phalanx that were more lightly equipped, kind of younger, who would rush to chase down the peltasts. I think they went out and tried to chase down the peltasts, but it didn't work out for them. The peltasts kind of escaped and just kept throwing their javelins at them, and they just kept whittling down the Spartan phalanx with their javelins. They tried to use their cavalry then, but the cavalry was a bit too ineffective, and ultimately the Athenians won. Iphicrates won that battle. But yeah, the peltasts were kind of a pretty major part, I think, of that warfare. And these were often, I think, Thracian mercenaries, though not exclusively. There could be
a bit
Greeks.
bulky, but effective nonetheless.
Well, no, bulky. That's the point. They're lightly equipped.
Oh, okay, never mind then.
The peltast, as I said, has this shield called a pelte. That's what the name means. I think they're typically dressed like an ordinary Thracian tribesman. You know, a tunic, their hats, you know, boots, that sort of thing. They wouldn't have been particularly heavy troops. That's not their job. Their job is to be skirmishers, to run around, throw javelins, typically, and fight in close quarters if need be. Though
They're
sometimes
supposed to be the nimble ones.
yeah, that was their job, and in many ways it is seen as more akin to Homeric warfare.
What kind of warfare?
Homeric.
What's Homeric warfare?
Basically the kind of stuff that's depicted in Homer's epics, like the Iliad.
Oh, so like a majority of the battles in the Odyssey and the Iliad, those are Homeric kinds of battles, or like that's their designation.
That's the idea. I think it's a more archaic style of Greek warfare. It was probably more skirmish heavy.
But was it like the norm?
At that time, see, the whole point is Homer. And this is not getting into whether or not Homer actually existed and composed these epics as his tradition.
Oh, of course, like taking that out of account.
These stories are quite old. They emerge, well, who knows when they emerged, especially with oral tradition, but I think they were probably in large part compiled maybe in the 6th, 7th century, maybe 8th century BC. Very roughly. It's probably a couple of hundred years before we get to the classical Greek civilization. So it's kind of like the archaic period. And I think by that time warfare was different. It wasn't really the hoplite style warfare that we would get by the classical period. Or just before that. So that's, and even then, I suppose the Homeric stuff is perhaps somewhat referencing a time of earlier. It's complicated, I suppose.
There's no like there's no like proper evidence to really narrow it down, is there?
I don't know. This is me talking largely from memory here. But suffice to say that this Homeric stuff is quite old and antiquated, and it's this general belief. The Greeks were big on trying to emulate it in some aspects, or see that as a form of almost like it's, I suppose, emulation, or at least they like this idea of trying to be like how it is in Homer and that Homeric legitimacy. But as far as I understand, Thracians and that sort of style of warfare that they did with the peltas was more like that Homeric and ancientness than the hoplite style warfare of the Greeks, which could be a cultural reason why they were more favourable towards peltas than other ranged troops, which they usually were not terribly fond of.
But it's not exactly set in stone, for sure.
These are general ideas I'm talking about. Don't ever take these to be like to be far firm, concrete, absolute ideas. There's always variables, and I don't think these are universal ideas. But in a broad sense, one could say Greeks were not the biggest fan of cavalry or ranged warfare.
Did they say this like the coward's way out, or did they just like
kind of? I think to a degree their cultural norm was it is proper and right to fight in a phalanx, to fight up close.
Any other way would basically just be like a chicken shit way out for them. Apparently, it's either
sort of in that
it's
sense.
either all in or not at all.
I guess to an extent that was the mindset, at least it seems. But again, I don't think it was universal, because they could probably be a lot more pragmatic than that mindset may give credit. You know, we look to, I like to point one example you could say is Xenophon's Anabasis. I've talked about this before, and the 10,000, and they get into a skirmish against a force led by Mithridates, a satrap of Artaxerxes, the Persian king at the time. it is after that whole encounter and how the Cretan archers and the Peltas were struggling against them, the enemy range troops, that Xenophon suggests about whether Rhodians in the 10,000, amongst the 10,000, they're meant to be skilled with slings and using lead ammunition. So let's just get them to do that then, to fight as slingers. Which helps. Because they were seen as quite skilled, the Rhodians. So, you know, so I guess my point is I say these things, but they're probably not absolutes. And I suppose even the fact that we have things like Cretan archers and Rhodian slingers, people who specialize in a ranged form of warfare from Greece, basically, and were popular enough to use as mercenaries. I think even Cretans might have also been popular as slingers. What this kind of tells us, I suppose, that these were not hard and fast ideas. One could suggest.
They were like just loosely adapted over time and just changed
Probably more
accordingly
like
based on the...
general norms, but not hard and fast. Kind of like
They were sort of malleable from time to time.
A little bit. They're probably a bit more pragmatic. You know, we could say they're probably a bit more pragmatic than we might give them credit for, even if I'm talking about this in that way. I suppose it's a bit like how, you know, it's probably not a hard and fast absolute idea about the Japanese samurai's view on firearms. Whilst it's maybe a semi-popular idea that they shunned firearms, they didn't, but there probably were still some that did. But broadly, firearms were welcomed once they're introduced, but this is probably getting too much into a tangent. I think I'm losing my train of thought as we keep jumping from topic to topic. But, yes.
Yeah, so far we've taken over some area near Parthenia, I believe. I don't know if that's the actual name, but...
Parthia.
Yeah, what he said, folks. And we were pretty successful in that, so now we're basically just setting up some political intrigues here.
Yes, engaging a little bit in the old politics, just...
playing the political game, playing the political sphere
in what
here.
You can do with the limit of Rome 2's politics. Total War games have never really been very full of depth with politics, and Rome 2 especially, this was not even a feature originally in Rome 2. This whole system got added in like patch 20? One of the last patches they introduced this system. And it's like mostly hard coded, so there's not a lot modders can do. Now I'm using Politics Reforged. Well, in theory I am, but I'm not sure it was ever really working. In part because I realized later in this campaign that I was using Politics Reforged and Diplomacy Reforged, but they needed a compatibility submod, to run in both. I didn't realize it until a little bit after I started this campaign.
I see.
So I don't think Politics Reforged properly worked initially. Then I ended up just getting rid of it. As I've often said, this campaign's kind of been a mess on a technical front.
Or when has it never been?
Yes, and that's the point. I've made a lot of mistakes in that sense. I've played around too many mods and just wanted to try novel things, but they weren't always ideally functional.
You live and you learn. It's not,
yeah,
it's
so
not the end of the
basically
world.
the next thing to do would be just to severely limit the amount of mods and submods I try to use in DEI as much as I can. But yes. So I'm getting rid of my unit of Indian elephants so I can recruit these Indian War elephants, armored elephants.
It'll be handy down the line, I'd say.
Well, there's more entities in them. So yeah. And they're better armor. And they have archers on their howdahs, or towers.
But yes, I do believe we're approaching the end here, dear viewers.
We are at the end. So this is where the Marian garrison outside Pura, maybe not Pura, no, tries to sally out.
So until next time, dear viewers, be safe, be sure to keep a like and subscribe on our channel, and we will see you all whenever we see you.
Indeed. Thanks for watching.